Good morning and welcome to Rochester in Focus. And in our focus this morning, the Rochester City School District. Later in the program, we will hear from outspoken school board member Van White, local attorney, and also Adam Urbanski, head of the Rochester Teachers Association. But first, I'm pleased to have as our guest Jean-Claude Brizard, the new Rochester City School Superintendent. Welcome.
Good morning.
When I say welcome, I mean you've been here for several months, and you've been on our program before, but the first chance that I've had a chance to be here to talk to you. You hit the ground running when you came, and you started making changes right away. Why?
You know, because we saw the need in the district that we didn't have time to waste. We're losing kids every single day, so really when you look at our generations of kids, there was no time to waste.
What did you know about Rochester City Schools that made you want to apply here? You came from New York City. And what have you learned since now that you've gotten settled in?
You know, for a number of things. One, I was a finalist for Deputy Commissioner in New York State, so I knew quite a bit about the cities in New York State. I have friends who live here, I have family who went to school here, so I knew quite a bit about Rochester before I came here. And it was a good fit for my skills and for what I saw was a need in the district.
And now that you've been here for a while?
You know, it's not different. The issues that we have here in Rochester are very familiar to anyone who's looked at urban districts across the state and across the country.
Okay. The City Teachers Union says schools are getting out of control. Parents are abrogating, some parents, obviously not all, abrogating their responsibility. And the teachers president wants to know how you plan to hold parents responsible for their children's behavior in the schools, which includes vulgar language, offensive language, and even teacher assaults.
You know, parents are responsible and they're accountable. The fact is, when they give us their most precious gifts, their children, we have to educate them. We're spending a record amount of money on school safety in the fall for around that kind of work, but the work of safety belongs to all of us. It belongs to the principal, the teachers, the parents, and the students. And we're putting a number of systems in place to make sure we make our schools safer, but all have to get on board to make that happen.
But again, how do you hold parents accountable if their children are misbehaving and disrupting the school environment?
You know, I think we need to hold ourselves accountable. We are the educators, we have the degrees, we have the expertise. They come to us, we've got to do the work with parents as partners. But I think the focus needs to shift to making sure that as educators, as the experts, that we make it happen for all of our kids.
So there will be no program or no procedure or policy for a parent to have to come into school. This is what the teachers are asking, that if a child has been disruptive and suspended or perhaps expelled, whatever, that the parent would have to come back with that child before that child gets back into school.
Right now, if you look at our suspension programs, parents have to come up for a conference, do it for a long-term or short-term suspension. Our parents come to these hearings on a regular basis. When you have a parent who worked 3 or 4 jobs, you really can't tell someone, don't go to work today, don't get paid so you can feed your family, and you have to come back. Again, the onus should be on us as educators because we are the experts in making this work.
Okay, I know that you have some initiatives to get parents more involved. Tell us about that.
You know, we're going to replicate a national model, one called the Parent University in Miami, and Dr. Rudy Crew, head of Miami, is giving us his best people to put that in place. So you'll see a more robust Parent University, everything from pregnant teens to how to raise a teenage son, and how do you understand what is happening in your school, what is your child learning on literacy and mathematics, really getting parents to become much more empowered.
What does this mean, university, a parent university? In other words, a school for parents?
We need to create demand parents, as Rudy Crew would tell you in Miami. Too many of our parents are supply parents. They give us their kids and then don't know how to engage in the process. We're going to empower them. We're going to show them what we do as educators and have them ask us the right questions.
Let's stay on this theme for a minute. Sure. There are many people who ascribe to the theory that it all starts at home. Do you?
Absolutely. You know, it starts at home, but as educators, we own a piece of that. And as a school district, we don't really control the birth to 4-year-old population. So getting our parents to understand the literacy needs of our kids before they come to school is tremendously important.
How important are those formative years? I know there's an effort to have universal pre-K, but yes. Some children as young as 3 years old are in pre-K programs and they benefit from that. But what about in the city?
It's tremendously important. You know, our kids' brains are wired very early on and very often before they even come to school. For example, this fall we're going to start 3 3-year programs in our district, paying for it from our general fund to begin to push that message to all involved, that it really is about making sure our kids, are read to before they come to school.
All right. Can you lay out for us in just very simple terms how you propose to improve test scores? That translates into graduation rates, and I think the last report was about 39% is the 4-year graduation rate, so that roughly a little better than 1 out of every 3 kids that come in as freshmen graduate in 4 years. I think it goes higher after 5 years.
Yes, yes. It's a complicated question. The simple answer is we have to get better at leading schools. We have to get better at teaching our students. So it really is a focus on teaching and learning. It has to be the bread and butter. It is the main thing that we do as educators, and that's what's going to improve instruction. It's by having a clear curriculum, assessing on a regular basis, and adjusting on a regular basis.
You have some schools that actually do better than others.
Yes.
Why not replicate what they're doing?
You want to learn from their practices. Of course, you want to compare demographics and compare student bodies to make sure that they have the same kinds of kids. But some of our educators in this city and across the country have figured out some of these things. So learning from them has to be first one of the things that we look to do as well. And you'll see us replicate and expand on successful programs.
Well, we're talking with Rochester City School Superintendent Jean-Claude Brizard this morning. He comes from New York City. And when we come back, we'll find out a little bit about him and his growing up. Stay with us. And if you're just joining us this morning, welcome. We are talking to City School Superintendent Jean-Claude Brizard, who comes from New York. And tell us something about your background. You grew up in Haiti.
Yes, I came here in 1976 at the age of 12 to a brand new country, very big country, very big city. So for me, it really was a learning experience being someone who doesn't speak English to walk in the middle of Crown Heights, Brooklyn. So it was a wonderful experience. Difficult, but wonderful.
You didn't know any English?
None whatsoever. I knew the word pig, P-I-G. That was about the extent of it.
So how did you fare in school? Your parents obviously valued education.
Yes, my father was an elementary school principal. My mom was a teacher. Coming here, of course, being where I'm from, Haitians didn't get involved. So my parents perhaps at first would have been accused of one of those parents who didn't come to school, because their mindset was that, you're the educator, you teach my kid, and you let me know when to get involved and when to become involved. I did quite well eventually. My first year was very difficult in this country because I was placed in a non-bilingual program and I struggled. But then I really sort of flourished after I found a teacher who taught me in my home language.
Mm-hmm. And why did you want to become an educator then?
I didn't. I wanted to be a doctor, studied chemistry in college, fell into teaching after getting my bachelor's in chemistry. They were looking for teachers in New York City, and you didn't have to have a license. You can come in with a temporary license. And I thought, I can get out of work at 2 or 3 in the afternoon and go back to graduate school. But then fell in love with an 8th grade class in Bushwick, and they kept me in the profession. I still love it today.
Mm-hmm. That's a great story. How do you convince children that learning is cool. They, on the street, very often are told learning is not cool. And of course, with popular culture being the way it is, so how do you turn that around?
You know, two ways. One is that you make kids successful. When a kid is successful in school, they tend to love what they're good at. Second is you make it relevant to their lives. You make it meaningful and relate to what they do every single day. They see connections, in other words. When you make curriculum relevant and you allow kids to be successful, they get turned on.
And I did my homework prior to the show, and I found out that there should be books for all school children. We've heard in the past that some kids don't have books, perhaps. But one thing that I notice driving in the city at times, kids going to and from school, not a lot of kids are taking books home. How do you get, I assume they're being assigned homework, but could this possibly be a reason why a link between maybe parents not being involved at home, kids aren't bringing books home, they're not spending time on homework, therefore they're not doing as well in the classroom?
You know, if you look at today's textbooks, they weigh about 10 pounds apiece. So I don't advocate kids carrying textbooks back and forth between school and home. But what I do advocate is a child carrying perhaps a novel, fiction or nonfiction, while they sit on the bus and they go home. So my dream would be to see every kid on the way home to school carrying a book they love and reading, whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
But what about homework? How do they do homework?
If they have textbooks at home and we have a class set in the classroom, the teachers can use the textbook and other instructional materials in the classroom, but perhaps assign homework using the textbook that they have at home, or perhaps a different set of materials they can use as well. It's not just about textbooks, it's about using all that's available to a child, whether it's the internet, whether it's periodicals or articles or textbooks. But back and forth, I would love to see them carrying novels in their hands or things they love to read anyway.
Do you kind of feel like you're on the hot seat? I don't mean necessarily
Yes.
here, but we're asking, important questions.
You know, sorry, finish.
Oh, that's right.
No, communities demand a lot of their schools, and they have a right to. I don't think it's a hot seat. I think people see it as an important piece of the work that we need to do to making sure that we have a viable city and a viable state and a viable country for that matter. So urban education, suburban education is important. And of course, right now the spotlight is on urban education because we're not doing as well. We have more challenges in the suburban district. But the fact is the community has a right to demand that schools perform because we do spend quite a bit of money on urban and suburban education.
Your programs deserve a fair shot, a fair chance to succeed or not. I've seen, though, some of your predecessors come up with nice sounding names for programs. I know you want to talk about dream schools. We can do that. You have Parent University. But after a while, they either fade away or they kind of fall by the wayside. So how do we measure, how do parents in the city and people who live in the city measure your success?
You know, first, it's always difficult to put a label to a program or to an initiative because people attach things to that. It's not about sexy programs, it's about really getting your hands into what you know works in day-to-day teaching of schools. But we expect to produce metrics and results and data to show what the progress has been, whether it's good news or bad news, because it's never going to be sort of a straight line going up. You see the stock markets up and down, but of course we look at the trajectory to be positive over the long term. But we expect to produce data for citizens to see and for people to judge on their own whether or not we're being successful. So it's about accountability at all levels.
All right, and quickly, Dream Schools, what's that all about?
It's about finding the lowest performing schools in our district and pouring resources in those places and really focusing on what we know is effective to move those schools as quickly as possible to proficiency because they are the neediest places in our district. A couple of our high schools who are dream schools or will become dream schools have graduation rates at 20% or below. That is unacceptable.
We have about a half a minute left. Anything you'd like to say to the community at large about your efforts?
You know, the support I've gotten from the city so far has been tremendous, and I am very appreciative of all of that. My family has been welcomed to the city. Watching the city transform in the spring with the trees and the flowers and the leaves, to me, it shows how beautiful Rochester really is. So I appreciate the support, and I expect that people will hold me accountable to everything that we do.
Jean-Claude Brizard, thank you very much for being
you.
our guest here this morning. When we come back, Van White and then Adam Urbanski, so stay with us. Joining us now is local attorney Van White, who once was Mayor Johnson's crime czar, we called it, but you were in charge of that aspect of city life at City Hall. Now you're a school board member.
That's right.
And I have with me an article here from when you were sworn in as a new city school board member not long ago. Of course, you didn't write the article.
Absolutely.
But the headline says, White vows to fix schools.
I read the article, and I had some thoughts about what I would do, of course, naturally, before I got in the school board. And the headline is a bit misleading because it suggests that I can singularly fix the problems that we have in the district, and I can't. As Jean-Claude indicated, and as you indicated, it really begins at home. Parents have to fix what is wrong in their homes. Teachers have to fix what is wrong in the classroom. Principals have to lead their buildings and address problems that exist there. Superintendents have to do what the citizens expect them to, and board members have to be involved in the fixing of the problem. So to suggest that I could single-handedly fix the problems is a bit misleading, but I stand by the obligation that I took that day, which is to help others, parents, teachers, principals, preachers, community leaders, to fix our schools.
Reporters.
That's right.
You attended city schools.
I did.
You're a product of city schools. Tell us quickly where you grew up, and I think you went to number 50 school,
50
right?
school. That's why I chose to be sworn in there. I went to 50 school when I was a young child. Then I went to 22 school, and I think it might have been like middle school at that time. I'm not really sure. This is many, many years ago, as you can see. And then my parents, when I was 10 years old, moved out to Brighton. And I went to the Brighton school system. So I've been very blessed in my life. I've had the opportunity to see be educated in an urban setting and a suburban setting. And I can tell you that every piece of my educational career has made me believe that everyone should be equally blessed. And so when people talk about fixing or making a contribution to our school districts, I want to make that contribution because I want everybody to have what I had at the district when I was a child and at Brighton when I was a child, right up to law school.
And both you and Superintendent Brizard both talk about your parents.
That's right.
Go back to your parents, as we all do, or a special teacher, maybe a mentor, someone that helped you along the way.
There's no question the role that parents play in directing the kids and what their kids will be. I mean, Jean-Claude has indicated that his parents were teachers. I'm sure that had a significant impact ultimately on the career that he chose. Nobody in my family is a lawyer, but all my family members believed in the worth of education. My parents believed that there was no question that each one of their 6 kids would graduate, and I suspect that that's one of the reasons why I came in shortly after that headline came out, and I said, listen, it's the graduation rate, stupid. That's what we have to focus on, because my parents taught us the most important thing is once you start a race, you got to finish it. That applied to elementary school, secondary school, law school, college. You had to finish. And so my parents influenced me to say, listen, if you're going to make a contribution to this community, it's got to be in education and making kids and families and schools get to the point where their kids get to the finish line.
And quickly, we have about a half a minute left. How, as a school board member, are you going to do this over the next so many years?
Well, I'm just not going to do it myself. But I got to tell you, Ray, I think we've had some great success through Jean-Claude, even before Jean-Claude, Bill Calla. We've, with laser-like focus, have looked at this issue of graduation rates. And we've said, where are our kids at? Not the retrospective analysis, what happened to the cohort in 2001, 2002, but what's happening to our kids as they are about to graduate. And I think that model has proven to be a successful one. I can tell you that our last year's senior graduation rate was much greater than it was in prior years, and we're waiting for the Commissioner of Education to release his data. I think our 4-year graduation rate this year, for '07, will be significantly, appreciably greater than it was from last year.
All right, we thank you, Van White, and we'll take a break, and we'll be right back after this. And joining us now this morning is Adam Urbanski, Dr. Urbanski. We don't often say that, but president of the Rochester Teachers Association. So far, Dr. Brizard, or Mr. Brizard, he's been here not even a full half a year yet, but what do you think?
Well, I think the jury's still out. I know that he's a very nice person. He's a great gentleman. I know he is sincere in his desire to make things a lot better for our students, and we join him in that. But there are some concerns that teachers have. Has to do with his communicating with teachers more often and with the union more often, and cooperating and not rushing into decisions that may not be as workable as they would otherwise be if we had a chance to provide input.
Teachers have been circulating a petition talking about violence in the schools, vulgar language. Is it a growing problem?
It's a growing problem, and we don't see any action on the part of central office to abate the problem. As a matter of fact, I can't recall last time that teachers would resort to a petition of this kind, and some of it, I think, is because of the new insistence on the part of the superintendent that there be no suspensions to homes. Now, we have no problem with that as long as there are alternatives to that. So if you're not going to suspend kids to homes, we have to know what can we do to help children with problems so they don't disrupt learning for everybody else.
The school district said just this past week that the 39% graduation rate is now up to 48%. It jumped 9 points because the state is now counting summer school. So those kids who didn't graduate in June, if they go to summer school and they get their diploma in August, 49%, what do you think, or 48%, what do you think of that?
It's better than 39%, but it's by far not good enough. I think that actually the district did the right thing to not give up on kids who are not on track to graduate, and intervening and putting them on track to graduate, because kids only are seniors once in their lifetime. And so long-term plans are fine and they're important, but you also have to intervene, and that's what they're doing. And I hope that this rate of graduation will continue to climb until it's 100% graduation rate.
Are you optimistic? Do you see positive change happening?
I am. I'm optimistic in the long run. In the short term, we have some problems, and they have to do with inadequate communication between central office and teachers, especially their union. And I intend to address that with Superintendent Brizard. It is in his interest, as it is in ours, and especially the students' interest, that we work together and pull in the same direction.
We hear a lot about poverty in the schools, that an overwhelming majority of city kids qualify for reduced price meals or free meals. Does poverty play a role? These kids are just as bright, are they not, as kids in the suburbs?
Oh, listen, the whole notion about whether poor kids can learn as well. I know from my own personal experience, and I know as a longtime educator in this district, that very often poor children have even more reason to want to learn, because they know that's their only ticket out of poverty, education. So of course poor children can learn, but poverty does represent some impediments to learning, and we have to provide the kind of social and health services for kids that would enable them to concentrate and to be ready, more ready for learning. So it's not an either or, it's believing that every child can learn and must learn and will learn, but not ignoring the social and health needs that children have, mostly children from poverty level, so that they won't remain impediments to learning.
You knew Mr. Brizard before he came, when he was in New York City. He oversaw high school, one of their high school networks of about 100,000 kids. Now he has about 32,000 kids. What do you see long term for him?
Well, I hope he succeeds, because if he succeeds, we succeed. I think he's very capable. I think he's intelligent. I think he is sincere. I think he has a steep learning curve here ahead of him, because Rochester is not New York City. He has a lot of potential partners here, and we want to be partners. He simply has to be wise enough to take advantage of that and recognize that it will be tough enough to make all schools work for all kids, even if we work together.
Well, Adam Urbanski, President of the Rochester Teachers Association, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
I'm Ray Lavala. That's Rochester in Focus this week. In 2 weeks, Camp Good Days will be here. We'll be talking with Gary Mervis about cancer. Hope you can join us.